Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Golf Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today. We're talking about the U.S. Open, the third of four majors in this busy golf schedule. We got a lot of field to talk about, many famous players to talk about that are in this field, of course, it being the third major. The U.S. Open, one of the more desirable ones as well, so excited to talk about that. That's, of course, going to be the topic of discussion most of today, as the first segment of the night will be going into a course breakdown of Pinehurst number 2, the site of this U.S. Open this year. The second segment will be talking about how Thursday's leaderboard shaped up, who was the most surprising and who was the most disappointing on the leaderboard right now. Our third segment of the night will go into the top storylines for this U.S. Open, what to watch out for as the weekend continues on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, who to watch and who to keep in mind. The fourth segment of the night will be talking about the history of how these guys have done at Pinehurst number 2, as it was the site of the U.S. Open in 2014, and how it has fared in history, the winning scores that everybody has gotten at this golf course. And then our fifth and final segment, I will wrap it up by giving my picks and predictions for the U.S. Open, talking about who are the current favorites and who is really stood out above the rest from this Thursday, as we have seen 25% of the field. But before all that, as always, we are going to talk, if you would like to help support the show in any way, use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. It makes a difference, and it really does help out all of the great creators here at the GSMC Sports Network. And without further ado, we're going to get right into our first segment of the night, talking about this golf course that has actually played so difficultly. Like, today, it showed how hard this golf course really is. Not a lot of guys breaking par today. In fact, it was only 15 guys were able to break par all day, with only 5 guys that were able to be north of 2 under. Bryson DeChambeau, Matthew Pabon, Ludwig Oberg, Rory McIlroy, and Patrick Cantlay were the only guys on the day that finished 3 under or better. Of course, Patrick Cantlay and Rory McIlroy getting off to a great start on this Thursday, but everybody else, this really did play like such a difficult golf course, and let's go through why it really does. First off, the biggest thing that stands out on this scorecard is the front 9 playing 2 strokes over par, and then as a total 18 holes. In a field like this, it played 3.25 strokes over par. What you see on the screen there is the hole stats from last year's Sunday, but I have they just updated the stats to be from the field today, so I'm going to tell you what I can see from the field today, but you guys are kind of getting a glimpse on the screen right now of what it was last year. Didn't change too much, but I believe the greens got way more difficult, and it played about 0.3 of a stroke harder than it did all of in 2014 on that Sunday. The hardest hole on the golf course by far was 6 today, but the second hardest hole on the golf course, and the one that I really want to talk about, is hole 4. Hole 4 and hole 5 are basically playing the same at par, hole 5 being the easiest, and that is the par 5, 582, but hole 4 is a 528 par 4. It was brutal today. There were only 5 birdies all day on it. There were more double pluses on hole 4 than there were birdies on hole 4. It was a great score to get a par. There were only 20 less bogeys than there were pars on the day on hole number 4. So many guys showed how difficult this golf course can be right off the gate. It's a 528-yard par 4, as I said, and it's a little dogleg left, but what makes it so difficult is, and this is what makes this entire golf course so difficult, there is the sand on either end of the fairway. If you miss in the rough, you're basically in sand, this entire golf course. But within that sand is little shrubs of greenage that just eat at a golf ball. I saw Victor Hovland... I forget what hole this was. I think it might have been 2 for Victor Hovland. But he goes from his tee shot that ended in the rough, that ended in that sand in the greenery. He then takes the shot out of the greenery. He got a good enough lie onto the other end of the fairway to the opposite rough. And he was just going to lay up. The plan was to lay up in the fairway, but you can't control where that ball goes when you get into these spots. He ends up in the other side of the rough, and then he ends up having to take a drop, having to take a penalty stroke because he was just inside of that green and he couldn't even see his ball from inside of the greenery. And it truly was so difficult for these guys to navigate. So that's even before you get to the green. And I haven't even talked about the hardest part of this golf course and why there are only 2 entire holes on this golf course that play under par. Yes, there are 2 holes on this whole course that are playing under par for these pros. And it was 5 that had a lot of eagles, almost as many eagles today on 5 as there were bogeys. Only 13 bogeys on 5. And then it was also the par 5 10th. That is a 619-yard par 5. I can't even imagine what I would do if I saw a 619-yard par 5 if I was golfing. There's a reason I'm not a professional golfer, and that's pretty much the exact reason. It would take me about 7 strokes to get to the green on that if I hit it well. I mean, 619-yard par 5 is absolutely insane. This is one of the longest courses on the PGA Tour schedule, par adjusted. It is a par 70 that's playing 7,569 yards. All of the par 3s are so difficult. A 213 par 3, a 206 par 3, a 186 par 3, and a 230 par 3. Only one par 3 plays under 200 yards, and it is the par 3 ninth that played over par and got more bogeys than birdies today. That was a very difficult hole. Hole 8 was another very, very difficult hole. Hole 8 was... It's a straightaway that this is what makes hole 8 so difficult. Was it is the green that has probably the least amount of surface area that you can safely hit the ball. On a lot of these holes, you saw it today that if you hit the green, you're not safe because they're so sloped on the edges that almost all of these greens are basically a plateau with dive where it dives off on all ends of it. So if you miss, but you're still on the green, if you miss the dead middle of the green, you're off of it. And it made it so difficult. It made it so much fun to watch. And for everybody that was really coming at Valhalla for the high scores that it came out with, they're going to love this golf course, let me tell you. It was such a difficult one today. Yeah, so 6, 8 was another one to look out for. Of course, the par 3 6th was the most difficult hole on the golf course. There were 7 double pluses on this hole. I saw Colin Morikawa with a 5 on this hole. I think Phil Mickelson took a 5 on this hole. There were so many guys that took a bogey on this hole. There were 83 pars and 63 bogeys on this one. Playing half of a stroke over par is insane. This was probably the most diabolical green that we saw all day. It was just absolutely volatile. Just all the greens on this course. Colin Morikawa, I think there was 2 different holes that I saw him play ping pong basically, and I saw this with so many guys today, just playing ping pong back and forth on the green, and then you end up off of it when you hit a good chip shot that you think should stay. Hideki Matsuyama was having a hard time scrambling today. That should tell you something. He is the PGA Tour leader in scrambling percentage on the year, and he was even having a hard time getting up and down on all of these holes. So what you need to do on this golf course is hit greens in regulation, but you need to hit the middle of the green. And Ludwig Berg did that so well today. We'll talk about that. Sorry. We'll talk about that more in the second segment of the night, how well he did on the day. But yes, you just need to be able to hit fairways basically because the rough is absolutely volatile. It's so hard to hit out of, especially because it has those plants that just suck in the ball and you just can't find it once you get them lost in those plants. And then also it is the greens and just playing around the greens. This sand is actually probably the easiest sand I've ever seen to be able to hit out of. The ball's coming out very fine with the sand, but it's just it's not miscalculations from the pros, but they're just, the holes are so difficult to judge that you just end up misjudging because it is so difficult for these guys that I mean, they're looking at a green that's just falling back, and I saw a bunch of clips leading up to the U.S. Open of guys trying so many different things. I saw Colin Morikawa having a fairway wood right outside of the bunker, right outside of the green from the fringe, seeing how that would work. I know Tiger Woods tried everything from a 4-iron all the way up to a 60-degree wedge to see what would work around the greens. A bunch of guys using very unconventional approaches at this golf course, and it makes for great television. Let me tell you, this was one of the more fun Thursdays that I've watched in recent memory, because you have there were, during the morning wave, there was Patrick Cantlay doing so great, and then they kept taking back to Neil Shipley, and he was like birdie, bogey, birdie, bogey, birdie, bogey, just going up and down. And then you also have like Justin Thomas that they kept going back to, and every time it seems like they went back to him, he had a double bogey or a bogey on his scorecard. And then Phil Mickelson did awful, and Kurt Kitayama did awful. And it's like, these are great golfers. These are guys that are perennial mainstays of the PGA Tour, and they're not having fun. Let me tell you. Of course, we all remember the infamous Phil Mickelson clip back, I think it might have been on Pinehurst number 2 in 2014, where he is putting and he's just like playing ping pong with the putter, and then he just ends up hitting the ball as it's still rolling to save it from going off the green, because it's about to go off the green. And I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen again this year. These guys aren't liking the greens here at Pinehurst number 2, and for good reason. It's definitely an interesting golf course that is showing the worst in a lot of these players that you didn't think was there. But the front 9 is so difficult, playing 2 strokes over par. And then the back 9, it doesn't really get any easier. You have more of the middle holes on the golf course, but this par 4 14th was very difficult for a lot of people. It had 3 doubles, only 7 birdies. The par 3 15 had 5 doubles, only 7 birdies. I mean, just all around this golf course was difficulty. Probably the easiest hole besides 10 on the back 9 was 18. That played about 300th of a stroke over par. So basically even par. Sorry. Basically even par on the day here. On 4, basically even par for 13. But for a bunch of these holes, it played so difficult. And this is what these guys, what these guys don't like to see, but what us as viewers and what everybody was kind of clamoring for after Valhalla, which, I'd be shocked to see Valhalla be a major golf course ever again. This is what a major golf course looks like. Very difficult greens that are fast, that play above par. The entire golf course has red on the hole sheet, as you're seeing on your screen right now. So we'll see how it plays for the next couple of days. I would absolutely be shocked to see anybody stretch this lead even more. Rory McIlroy had a great day, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment, but it's definitely a difficult golf course where anybody can go in the green at any point. So that will take us into our first break of the night. We just got done talking about the golf course at Pinehurst number 2. When I come back from my break, we will be talking about the leaderboard from Thursday and who really separated themselves from the pack.